So the next thing we're going to focus on is section 3. So section 3 is all about web conversion. So what you just saw is the ability to optimize your website to its full capacity. So by understanding who your vendors are, optimizing all the pages for the organic search engines and the rankings and the mobility, understanding our analytics, taking a look at the visualizations and the placement of particular content, literature, multimedia, photos, videos, that type of thing, and understanding how that content evolves with the seasons and different things like that. Now we've optimized the web performance. And then secondly, we just kind of went through the basics on understanding social media count, search engine keywords, and online PPC, which really are your 3 ways to drive traffic to the website. And we know how you're performing. We know how some competitor domains are performing, and then we also know how the industry is interpreting this information and using it to catapult growth on the website. So now that we've driven this traffic, we have all this perfectly optimized traffic coming to the website. It's all about conversion. We want to get people through your sales funnels and actually engaging with you to some capacity. So what I first want to do is talk about the on-site targeted promotions. And so the concept of this module, which we call Smart Pop Offerings, is kind of your best foot forward, right? Take the analogy, if someone showed up to an interview in sweatpants and a t-shirt, there's a preconceived notion about how that person is applying an effort towards how they're dressing, and therefore the notion of how we're applying or how that person's going to work in the company is negatively skewed. And that's an example of a negative interpretation. A Smart Pop offering is designed to give a positive interpretation before a customer even comes to the website. And the idea again being, if you serve the right content to the right people at the right time, you're going to deal with better conversion numbers. So if I go ahead and click on the Smart Pop-Up conversion module, what you're going to see here is a very elaborate pop-up dashboard. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through an example of setting up a particular pop-up for the website. And so when I say the word pop-up, let me just give some clarity to what that definition is. A pop-up, is most common on a website. You'll see a video pop up within a few seconds of the website kind of showcasing a particular offer, particular product or service. Another pop-up medium is you'll see a new photo or just a pop-up picture of an offering or coupon code. Another pop-up could be a request to put your email on file for a particular newsletter that the business is trying to start up. Or even another pop-up could be on a specific service page. It pops up and says, get a free quote. We'd like to collect more information. Can you give us some contact and we can produce to you an ebook? And they're kind of considered pop-ups with lead magnets. So the lead magnet piece being we're going to give you something to get information. Either way, the idea being you visit a particular page or pages of a website, and a few seconds later a pop-up, whether it be small, medium, large, or full screen, will overtake the screen and showcase some important information relative to you. Keyword being relative. And that's ultimately the problem. There's a fine line in the industry between relative and annoying. And if you skirt too much on the annoying side, you'll get a high bounce rate because people are going to interpret that pop-up as a nuisance and not want to revisit the site or get frustrated and want to leave immediately. If it's relative and we know what the customer is looking for before they even get there and guide them, it becomes a completely better experience for that customer. And therefore, it's similar to the analogy I just made that someone comes in, shirt and tie, fit the part, and you have a preconceived notion that that person is already going to be successful in what they do. And the idea being a customer is going to see that you're giving them quality information at the right time, and they're already going to be and have this preconceived notion that your product and service is the best fit for them. And that's the idea of the conversion. So again, let me kind of go through and show what this module does. And we're going to set up an example module just to showcase it. So first thing we're going to do is put time to reopen. And what this means is that I'm just going to put in minutes 0. What that means is that when a pop-up pops up onto the screen, the moment someone presses the X in the upper right corner to minimize that pop-up, they go to the next page, this will pop up again in 0 minutes. So it's going to keep popping up on every single page or every time they visit the site. So you go to the site, it pops up, you leave, you come back 2 weeks from now, or you come back 5 minutes later, the timer's set to 0 minutes. So it's going to keep popping up every time you visit the site. This is good and bad. If it's a weather alert or an emergency, you may want it to pop up every single time. Some people, might look at the week spread or might look at a day spread. So, you could put potentially 60 minutes here. And what that means is that if someone goes to the website today, the pop-up comes up, and then they go and leave the site, they come back 35 minutes later, it's still within 60 minutes, they are not going to see the pop-up. But if they leave and come back tomorrow, it's exceeded 60 minutes, and that pop-up's going to come back up again. If you want, you can go crazy, and if you never want that pop-up to show, so kind of a one-and-done type pop-up, we can do something very ridiculous and just do, a million minutes here or a gazillion minutes here in this example, and what's going to happen is just they view the pop-up, and literally it's going to be another 12 years before they see this pop-up ever again. So this is kind of a one-and-done example. The other thing you're going to have here is, and this is a completely optional field. You may choose to have your pop-ups always go off based on the minutes, but you may also just choose to make the availability only go to a particular Friday, and maybe you want to put, let's just say 1 o'clock p.m. And so what's going to happen here is on Friday the 16th, 1 o'clock, this pop-up will no longer be active. It's going to not work. Even if it's set to every minute, every time you come to visit the website, after this time, this pop-up will auto-expire. Again, completely optional. Or you can set the status to be disabled, as different pop-ups might apply to different seasonality or different price point breaks. If you move over here, you're going to notice another column called the offer or the offering. So in here is going to be where you put your video, where you put your photo, where you put your coupon, where you put your sign up. It might be whatever it's going to be, but it's HTML compliant. So what you can do is, if you do have some type of CRM system that generates a pop-up form, you have a potential video on YouTube or Vimeo, you have a coupon generator, and you partner with a retention company, you can just take their HTML snippet of code and you can put it right inside here, and all that HTML is going to work well. And it also allows, if you do have a web guy, a web team, webmaster, it allows them the flexibility to create some colors and styles and customizations to the pop-up itself to make it a little bit more user-friendly. And so for the example, we're just going to say 50% off. And it could just be text. This is not going to be pretty. It's just going to be a pop-up with a white background saying 50% off. But for the example, this will work well. What you can do is, you're going to set the delivery parameters of how big you want this offer to be. So if you want it to be full screen, if you set it to be 100% by 100%, this pop-up is going to be full screen on the website. If you truly want it to be in a pop-up format where it's not the whole screen, you might want to do a 75 by 75, which means 75% of the height. So this is going to give you a nice 1-inch margin wrapped around that pop-up, making it feel truly like a pop-up. And that wraparound border that's going to outline the pop-up, you can choose the brand color by just dragging and dropping a particular color or typing in a specific hex value that might indicate what color you want. What's pretty common is doing a black pop-up around the radius and setting it to be about 75 to 75. If you're trying to make it coupon size or make it smaller, it might be more appropriate to do like a 30 by 30. So it's a micro pop-up relative to the content that we see here. So the next thing I'm going to showcase is the delivery of this pop-up. And so there's a lot of customization you can start to do here. So this is basically saying, when do you want this, or who do you want this pop-up to be available to? Do you want it to be available to phone users? Yes or no? Do you want this pop-up to be available to tablet users? Yes or no? How about PC users? Yes or no? And the next question is, where do you want this pop-up to be delivered to? So let's take an example. If you leave it empty, it's going to be any page a particular customer lands on your website will get this pop-up. If you're trying to tailor it to a specific product or service or offering that you can tie it to, in this example, I'll make up something, but if we do the Corvette page, now only on the Corvette page is going to be where this pop-up lives. And so now what this does is, now we understand these people have expressed interest in Corvette, and therefore it makes sense to give them such an offering. Now you're serving the right content, the right offer to the right people of interest. Another thing you may want to do in terms of delivery is how many times does one have to come to your website before this pop-up becomes available. So if you put 0, that means that they've never been to your website ever. They've been there 0 times. You want the pop-up to show up. And now you can determine between a new customer and a recurring customer. And you can also take it a step further and say, if you want to further the interest level, and you'd have to take a look at what your analytics tell you, but maybe if we put 3 here, that means that a customer has come to the website and they've clicked around 3 times, they're on the Corvette page, and now this pop-up's offered. And what that does is now we've identified that someone they're recurring to the website. They didn't just land there by chance on the Corvette page. They've clicked around, they've wound up on the Corvette page, which means there's interest there, and they've clicked around 3 or more times, and now they're seeing the pop-up. So this is ideally, in our opinion, a warm customer, someone who expresses interest in this particular product. And then you could set hours of operation. So just as we did in the past, we could go here and we could say 1 p.m. up until 5 p.m., especially if you're trying to run a particular promotion on certain days and you don't want the pop-up to always be available. And if you look over here in the options, if you want to be closed for the day, you'll just put 12 to 12 a.m. So if you put 12 to 12 a.m., Tuesday, the pop-up will not be available. On Wednesday, if you want it to be available all day, all you have to do is put 12 p.m. to 12 p.m. and that's going to make that day open 24 hours. The next thing we're going to talk about is applying filters to the pop-up audience. And most of these filters are completely optional. In fact, they all are. But this will kind of help you further hone in the right customer at the right time. So for example, internet speed may not seem like an important filter, but let me give you an example. If you're trying to serve up to your audience a long-winded video testimonial showcasing about your product, it's probably not going to make sense to have someone on a smartphone with slow internet speed view that pop-up, especially if you do a giveaway in the video or something similar. So what you may end up doing is, rather than filtering out your phone users, which could be a huge subsegment of your customer base, you could go over here and say, well, I want to make sure him or her have at least, let's just say, 4 megabits a second up to Comcast 25. So typically a residential household is going to have 25 meg internet speed connection, and 4 or 5 is going to put them on about the Wi-Fi range. You could even push it up a little further. But now, this means that your video pop-up is going to be delivered fast and in high quality video, and anyone less than 6 megabits per second on an internet connection is not going to receive this pop-up, and therefore they're not going to have a diminished experience, resulting in someone walking that fine line of being annoyed that that video has popped up. So do you see how that all kind of ties together? The next thing is, if you want to start looking at segmented audiences based upon Facebook and Google and LinkedIn, you can use this technology or this generic filter technology to hone into a specific user group. So let's just say you are running a cross-platform Facebook advertisement. You may want to make sure those individuals are all logged into their Facebook, meaning they have a Facebook. And what this does is it now co-references that they are in a Facebook campaign of yours that you built. And it also starts to put kind of loose age brackets to the audience, because as we know, as different studies have been produced, anywhere from age 15 up to about age 42 is typically the audience of Facebook. Or if you want to tie it to more of a Gmail audience, and you're trying to go after more people that are using Gmail and Google and different things like Google services, you can make sure that you want to make sure that person required to have a Google account to be able to view this offering. Or if you want to tie it specifically to more of the B2B type social media marketplace, you can say, I want to make sure that person has a LinkedIn page, and these don't matter. When it says doesn't need to be, that's just saying that that is not a prerequisite. It doesn't, the customer, whether or not they're logged into Facebook, they don't need to be, they'll still see the offering. If it's required and they're not logged in, they will not see this offering. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is IP filtering. So this is more if you're going after a specific business. But let's just say we know and we've been trying to hunt down this one business for quite a while. You want to get real granular with this offer. And I'm going to go and type an example of Merck. If I press search to find the business Merck, first of all, it's going to find Merck and it's going to give me the business address. Make sure I'm located the right Merck, right? Because there could be different branches, there could be different facilities. That name could be very common, and there could be thousands of businesses across the country with the name Merck. But once we find the right business, it's going to give an IP address. And then what you're going to be able to do here is take that IP address and paste it into here. And now what we've actually just been able to do for the first time ever is we are going to only offer this pop-up to Merck. And what that means is to this IP, which happens to be Merck's IP, and it could be multiple IPs, so we could comma separate and do multiple ones in case Merck has a couple different IPs across the board. I'm just making up some fake IPs here, but or even just multiple customers, right? You're going after an industry with 5 or 6 pharmaceuticals, with 5 or 6 automotive, and you know all the IPs and they are all allowed to see that same promotion. You can blend together a handful of businesses in the IP filtering. But in the example of that we just did one business, that means that only a Merck employee at the Merck facility, on a Merck laptop, or on a Merck phone is going to see this offering. And so let me give you a practical example of why you may want to do something like that. Because you may want to write a message, something along the lines of, you know, all Merck employees will receive up to X% off all merchandise. Okay? So what we're basically saying here is that we want to give a discount, but we only want to give a discount to that particular manufacturer. And so take the example of automotive, since we're in this world. What you'll notice is that General Motors does offer different employee discounts to specific partners such as Vanguard and AT&T and Merck employees and different things like that, different unions. And what we want to do is we want to tie specific advertising messages to those customers only. And because, right, we potentially could lose a little bit of money on the backside of the operation, and we don't want to really showcase all of our cards to all of our customers. So why would you say to a Vanguard employee, did you know Merck employees get 50% off all their vehicles? Has no application to Vanguard. Maybe Vanguard's only 4% because of whatever deal was negotiated. Why would you want to showcase that? And that's that line I was talking about in terms of being relative, but being overbearing and annoying that someone wants to leave. So now you can create these targeted campaigns to specific multiple businesses at once doing comma separate, or specific business. You can hone into that company and give a targeted message just to that customer base. There are 2 more columns that can be relative to product or service that you sell. And so let's assume that we're not trying to target in specifically to a specific business. But let's just say we're trying to leverage the weather to determine and drive traffic into potentially like a retail establishment, or it could be an online establishment. But in this example, let's just take retail. So what we can do is we can make weather-based filters based on the location. So the location is going to be off of this location. So I didn't put a location in. For this example, I'm just going to make up some latitude and longitude. Potentially this is somewhere in Philadelphia. And now we have Philadelphia marked. And now what we're going to do is basically say, only if it's sunny at our Philadelphia office will you see this pop-up. What if you don't want to do this? What if you want to tie it to temperature? What if you want to say if it's 80 to 100 degrees, this promotion will be available? What if the location has no relevance to it? So you can say do not use weather if you're not going to use it, or you can tie it to the user's location. So now what's going to happen is, let's just say you're a big customer that has find yourselves at the crossroad of multiple highways where you get people driving, potentially to you from a couple hours in all sorts of directions. It might be relative to take a look at where that consumer lives and offer specific things to that customer based on their location. Because what if your retail is in an elevated location and it always tends to be colder or a little bit more snowy? Doesn't really matter. What you care about is that user at their house, are they experiencing something that may want them to buy your product? And so therefore, again, taking just the elevation analogy, if that business is, let's just say, in the mountains and it's always 30 degrees cold or 10 degrees cold or something like that, doesn't matter, but we want to look at that resident and we want to say, hey, does that resident experience 80 to 100 degree weather? If it's 80 to 100 degrees today, I want to offer this specific offer. Then we take it a step further, and if you keep going to the far right-hand side, we did put that latitude and longitude. Again, I'm going to use the example and pretend this is Philadelphia. You can find that by clicking here and typing in any address that your heart desires, whether it be brick and mortar or virtual, and it will give you the latitude and longitude to plug into here. But let's just say you only want to target customers that are within a 5 to 10 miles spread of Philadelphia. That means someone who's 4 miles away will not see this, and someone 10.1 miles is not going to see this offer. But someone within that 5 to 10 miles of this Philadelphia location is going to see this pop up. Then you can take it kind of a final step further to further distill the customer segment groups, and you can either disable it, or if you turn it on, there's two options. One, you can do a B2B or a B2C filter. So if I turn this off, it's basically only going to allow residential to look at this offering. If I flip-flop, now it's B2B. Now only businesses can view this offering. And if we turn them both on, let's just say as the example, you can also put revenue mins and maxes against a business. So you might say, I want to look at businesses that have 500,000 that make 500 billion. Or I want to make sure we sell residential information and we know that homeowners that have a property value of $250,000 up to $1.5 million are more likely to buy our product. So therefore you put in the values, and only if that resident has a home value of 150 or less than 1.5 million but over $250,000, that is the only time that this person is going to see that pop up. The last thing I'm going to showcase on here is just the time zone, and that's relative to these times. But you can create as many pop offerings as you wish. You just have to make sure that the offerings don't overlap, because only one offer will show to one customer. What I mean by that is if we make two offers, one that says 5 to 10, the other one that says 10 to 20, one offer is going to show because they overlap. What you need to do is you need to do an overlap like that. So therefore it's 5 to 10 going to see offering A, and then basically offer B kicks in when they're 10.1 up to 20 miles outside of Philadelphia. But you could pick virtual locations, you could tie this around retail establishments, you could tie this to specific virtual advertising against specific businesses or an industry of business.